Little sister yelled, "Back away, pedo," at me in front of everyone at her school while I was delivering mail for USPS, and now I don't know what to do. My original post got removed from our advice for some reason, so I'm trying here. Mods, if this isn't allowed, just let me know and I'll delete it. Background, I, 27M, have been the guardian of my younger sister, 13F, for almost 2 years now. Our parents, well, that's a whole different story that would take too long to get into. But basically, they're not in the picture anymore. Mom got diagnosed with cancer when my sister was 10, and then dad couldn't handle it when she passed and started drinking himself to death. He ended up getting into a car accident that took his life too about a year after mom. So it's just been me and my sister living together in this small 2-bedroom apartment that I can barely afford on my USPS salary. She's all I've got, and I'm all she's got, which makes this whole situation even more complicated. I've been dealing with a lot of shit lately. My job at USPS has been grinding me down with these insane hours and routes that keep changing. My supervisor is an absolute nightmare who seems to enjoy making my life miserable. He's one of those people who got a tiny bit of power and lets it go to his head. Some days I'm delivering until it's dark out, and the pay isn't great for what they expect us to do. I had to give up my online classes because there just wasn't time anymore between work and taking care of my sister. But I keep at it because it pays the bills and has decent benefits, which is important when you've got a teenager to take care of. I'm also still paying off some of dad's medical bills that somehow became my responsibility. Plus, there's the therapy for my sister that insurance only covers part of. So yeah, money's tight. I've been picking up extra shifts whenever possible, which means I'm hardly ever home. My sister has been spending a lot of time alone or at her friend Maddie's house. Maddie's mom is nice enough to help out sometimes, letting my sister stay for dinner or giving her rides home when I'm working late. My apartment complex isn't in the greatest neighborhood either. The landlord keeps raising the rent but won't fix anything. Last month, the hot water heater broke and it took him 2 weeks to replace it. We had to shower at the gym where I have a cheap membership. The neighbor across the hall is always smoking something that definitely isn't tobacco, and the couple next door fights at 2 a.m. regularly. But it's what I can afford right now, and moving would cost money we don't have. I try to keep things as normal as possible for my sister. I make sure she has everything she needs for school. I help with homework when I can, and I've been setting aside a little money each month for a college fund, even if it's just $20 or $30. I want her to have opportunities I didn't have. So anyway, recently they switched my route to include deliveries to the local middle school and high school. My sister goes to the middle school, which I thought might be kind of cool at first. Maybe I'd get to see her during the day sometimes, wave hello, that sort of thing. Boy, was I fucking wrong. Today I was at the middle school walking to the main office with a stack of mail. It was during class transition, so there were kids everywhere in the hallway. I was trying to navigate through this sea of preteens when suddenly I hear someone yelling, "Back away, pedo!" really loudly. I almost jumped out of my skin and looked around to see who was yelling and what was going on. It was my sister, standing there with her friend Maddie, pointing at me and laughing her ass off. I immediately felt my face go hot, and I told her that wasn't funny. Some of the other kids were already staring and whispering. A teacher who was monitoring the hallway, I think her name was Ms. Thompson or something, came over with this stern look on her face and asked what was happening. I was legit panicking at this point and tried to explain as calmly as possible that I worked for USPS. I was just delivering mail, and this was my younger sister making a really inappropriate joke. My sister was just standing there with this smug look on her face the whole time, like she was enjoying watching me squirm. The teacher seemed skeptical at first, but eventually told my sister and her friend to get back to class. Before she walked away, I called out, "Hey," to my sister, and when she turned around, I said, "Give me your phone," in the most serious voice I could muster. She looked shocked and said, "What?" like she couldn't believe I was actually punishing her. I repeated myself and told her to hand over her phone. She started to protest, but I just held out my hand and stared her down until she finally dug it out of her pocket and slammed it into my palm. She looked really pissed as she stomped off to class. I'm not usually the confrontational type. I avoid conflict whenever possible, but something about this just pushed all my buttons at once. I've been called a lot of things in my life, but pedo is definitely a first, and the fact that it came from my own sister made it 1,000 times worse. I had to continue my route after that, but I was so distracted I almost delivered mail to the wrong addresses a couple times. I kept replaying the scene in my head and wondering if I had overreacted, but then I'd remember the word pedo and panic all over again. Do you know how serious an accusation like that is? Especially when you're a guy who works around kids? One wrong person hears that, and suddenly I'm being investigated, maybe even arrested, definitely fired. And then what happens to my sister? The rest of my shift was a blur. I kept thinking about what I was going to say to her when I got home. I've never been good at this discipline stuff. When our parents were alive, I was the fun older brother who'd sneak her ice cream before dinner and cover for her when she accidentally broke something. Now I'm supposed to be the responsible one, and it's not a role that fits me comfortably. I finished my route feeling like absolute shit. Not only was I embarrassed in front of a bunch of middle schoolers and a teacher, but I was worried about potential consequences. When I got home that afternoon around 6, she was already there. I usually work late, so my neighbor checks in on her after school, and she was pissed. She wouldn't even look at me when I came in. I tried to make dinner and act normal. I made her favorite pasta dish as a peace offering, but she just took it to her room without saying thanks. She left her door open a crack though, which I took as a sign she wasn't completely shutting me out. I've learned to read these little signals over the past couple years. I sat on the couch for a while, flipping channels but not really watching anything. I could hear her talking to someone on her laptop, probably Maddie or one of her other friends. I caught fragments like totally unfair and so embarrassing, and figured she was venting about me. Finally, after we both cooled down a bit, I knocked on her door and asked if we could talk. She shrugged, which is teenage girl for fine, whatever. I sat down on the edge of her bed and explained that her behavior was completely inappropriate and unacceptable. I told her she could have made me lose my job, which is literally putting food in our mouths and keeping a roof over our heads, all for a stupid joke. I asked her if she understood the seriousness of what she did. She got all defensive and started with the, "Who do you think you are, my parent?" line. That hit a nerve because I'm trying my best here. I'm not trying to replace our parents. I'm just trying to keep us together and make sure she grows up okay. I told her, "I think I'm the person who pays for your cell phone bill and can easily cancel that phone plan anytime they want." Maybe not my finest moment, but I was upset. She just walked away from me without saying anything. I called after her, asking if she was gonna eat dinner or if I should put it away. Her response was to flip me off as she went downstairs. I called out that I was keeping her phone another day for that gesture. Probably not the best way to handle it, but I was at my wit's end. I could hear her rummaging around in the kitchen, probably looking for snacks. She came back upstairs with a bag of chips and slammed her door. I stood there for a minute not knowing what to do. I went back to the living room and tried to distract myself with a movie, but I couldn't focus. I kept thinking about how much simpler things were before our parents died. My sister and I always got along great. We'd have movie marathons when I visited home from college, and she'd text me about her school drama, and I'd give her Big Brother advice. Now every conversation feels like walking through a minefield. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept going over and over the incident in my head. Was I too harsh? Not harsh enough? What would our parents have done? I never thought I'd miss my dad's lectures, but at least he seemed to know what he was doing as a parent. I'm just making it up as I go along. Look, my sister is literally the most important thing in my life. She's the reason I get up and go to that shitty job every day. She's usually a really good kid. Smart, funny, kind, but lately she's been acting like a completely different person. I don't know if it's just normal teenage stuff or what, but it's driving me crazy. When our parents died, I promised myself I'd do whatever it took to keep us together. I didn't want her going into foster care or living with our aunt who has her own issues and lives across the country. But there are days when I wonder if I'm cut out for this. I'm only 27. I was supposed to be figuring out my own life right now, not raising a teenager. I had plans. Finish my degree, maybe travel a bit, date without worrying about whether they'd be a good influence on my sister. Most days were fine. We have our routines. I make breakfast before work. She gets herself ready for school. I leave. Money for lunch. She texts me when she gets home. I call to check in if I'm working late. We watch stupid reality shows together on the weekends and make fun of the contestants. Normal stuff. But then something like this happens, and I realize how fragile our whole situation is. One bad decision could bring it all crashing down. I don't know. Maybe I overreacted by taking her phone. Maybe I should have just let it go. But that pedo comment could have seriously fucked up both our lives if the wrong person heard it. So, Reddit, Ita, update 1. Holy shit. I didn't expect this post to blow up like it did. Thanks for all the comments and support, and to those saying I'm overreacting, I hear you too, I guess. Sorry I couldn't respond to everyone individually. I was working a double shift yesterday. To answer some common questions, yes, I have legal guardianship. No, I don't have any other family members who could help out, at least none that are reliable. Yes, we've both been in therapy, though I had to cut back on my sessions to pay for hers. And for the person who asked if I've tried just talking to her, of course I have. I'm not a complete idiot. And for all the people saying your sister has trauma too, no shit, Sherlock. I'm well aware that she lost both parents in less than a year. Why do you think I'm trying so hard to keep things stable for her? She has a therapist, I make sure she gets to her appointments, and I try to be there for her as much as I can. But that doesn't mean she gets a free pass to do whatever she wants without consequences. So, stuff has happened since my original post. First off, I delivered mail at her school again yesterday, and managed to catch the teacher who was involved in the situation. I was super anxious about the whole thing, and asked her if anything was going to come of the incident. I was pretty much expecting the worst, that maybe she'd already reported it to the principal or something. She told me she actually had a talk with my sister after it happened, and based on what my sister said and what she witnessed firsthand, she didn't feel a need to report it officially. But she did warn me that if my sister keeps saying stuff like that, she would feel obligated to report it. I nearly collapsed with relief right there in the hallway. The teacher actually seemed pretty understanding once she realized the situation. She mentioned that my sister is usually a good student, which was nice to hear. The teacher also recommended a school counselor who runs a group for kids who've lost parents. I got the contact info, and I'm going to look into it. Might be good for my sister to talk to other kids who get what she's going through. The problem is getting her there since it meets after school on days when I'm usually working. But maybe I can work something out with Maddie's mom. I've been thinking about this whole situation for the past couple days and doing some soul searching, or whatever you want to call it. I decided I needed to have another conversation with her about the severity of what happened. Yesterday I worked a particularly brutal shift. My fourth 14-hour day in a row. Yes, USPS can work us like that, especially when they're short-staffed. I was completely drained, both physically and emotionally. One of my coworkers kept making these passive-aggressive comments all day, and my supervisor chewed me out for something that wasn't even my fault. By the time I got home, I was ready to just collapse into bed. But when I walked in the door around 9:30 p.m., my sister was actually waiting up for me. She was sitting at the kitchen table doing homework, which was unusual because she normally retreats to her room. She said she wanted to talk. We sat down at the kitchen table and she told me she was really sorry for what she said at school. She apologized for embarrassing me and said she didn't mean to put my job at risk. She also apologized for flipping me off the other day and said she loved me. I was honestly surprised by the apology. She's usually too stubborn to admit when she's wrong. Maybe some of your comments about how serious this was got through to her. She does browse Reddit though. I don't think she knows about this post. I had planned out some things I wanted to say to her, but her apology threw me off a bit. Still, I went ahead with what I'd been thinking about. I told her I appreciated her apology, but I wasn't sure she fully understood how serious her joke was. I explained that if the wrong person had heard her, it could have led to CPS getting involved and potentially separating us. She could end up in foster care, living with strangers who might not treat her well, and I could face legal trouble and job loss, all because she wanted a laugh. She looked kind of shocked at that, like she hadn't thought it through that far. I think kids sometimes don't realize how one stupid comment can have huge consequences. Then I brought up her attitude lately, the disrespect, the talking back, the eye rolling, all of it. I reminded her that while I'll always be her big brother, right now I'm also her guardian and responsible for raising her to be a decent human being. So I told her I was going to limit her screen time and internet access, and that I'd be replacing her smartphone with a flip phone. That's when shit hit the fan. She stared at me for a second like she couldn't process what I'd just said. Then, she asked if I was joking and why I would do something so extreme. I tried to stay firm and just repeated that this was the decision I'd made. She started begging and apologizing more intensely, saying her joke was stupid but not worth such a harsh punishment. She actually started crying, which made me feel like complete garbage. Part of me wanted to back down and say I'd reconsider, but I stuck to my guns. To be honest, I'd been concerned about her phone use for a while now. She's always on it, even during meals, and I've noticed she gets really anxious if she doesn't have it with her. Plus, I don't know what she's looking at or who she's talking to half the time. After this incident, it seemed like a good opportunity to address that issue. 2. I tried explaining that it wasn't just about the pedo comment, but about her overall attitude and behavior lately. The phone seemed to be at the center of a lot of our problems. Her staying up too late scrolling through whatever app is popular. Now, her not doing chores because she's too busy texting. Her getting annoyed when I ask her to put it away during dinner. But she wasn't hearing any of that. When she realized I wasn't budging, her attitude completely changed. She went from apologetic to attacking me from every angle. According to her, I was being controlling, malicious, self-centered, and a bunch of other shit. Then she hit below the belt and brought up my recent autism diagnosis, questioning how it affects my decision-making abilities. Yeah, I should probably explain that. A few months ago, I was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. It was kind of a relief, actually, because it explained a lot of things I've struggled with my whole life. But I haven't really told many people about it, and I'm still figuring out what it means for me. My sister only knows because she overheard me talking on the phone. That's the one point where I lost my cool a bit. I just said ableism, nice, and she came back with, is it ableism if you're actually being stupid? I just nodded and said, well thought out rebuttal. There was more back and forth, but it ended with her screaming that I was being unreasonable and that she hates me before storming upstairs and slamming her door. I guess it could have gone worse. At least she didn't. Tell me she wished I was dead again. Yeah, that happened once during a previous argument. Or that she wished she didn't live with me. I hate you isn't great, but I can deal with it. After she went to her room, I sat in the kitchen for a while just feeling drained. I wanted to call someone and vent. But honestly, there's no one. My friends from before our parents died have mostly faded away as I've had less and less time for them. I don't really talk to my coworkers about personal stuff, and I can't afford a therapist for myself right now. Sometimes it feels like I'm drowning and there's no one to throw me a life preserver. I'm supposed to be this rock for my sister, but who's my rock? I ended up just watching some mindless YouTube videos for an hour or so before going to bed. I think I heard my sister crying in her room at one point, but when I knocked on her door, she told me to go away. I left a granola bar and a juice box outside her door in case she was hungry. The next morning was awkward as hell. We moved around each other like ghosts, trying not to make eye contact. I made her favorite breakfast, French toast, but she just mumbled not hungry, and took an apple to eat on the way to school. I noticed her eyes were puffy and red from crying. I texted her around lunchtime just to check in, but she didn't respond. I tried not to freak out. She was probably just ignoring me, not kidnapped or anything. But I kind of forgot that I didn't give the phone back to her. Made me realize how tired I currently am. She got home before me that day, normal schedule, and I found her doing homework at the kitchen table when I arrived. Progress, I guess? We had a quiet dinner, just the occasional pass the salt type comments. After dinner, she asked if she could watch TV, and I said yes. We ended up sitting through some cooking competition show neither of us really cared about, but it was better than silence. Oh, and sorry for any typos, or if this doesn't make sense in places. I'm exhausted and pretty much fighting to stay awake as I write this. Thanks again for all the support and advice. I'm trying my best here. Update 2. It's been about a week since my last update. Sorry for the disorganized post, but I haven't slept properly in days. This past work week has been absolutely brutal, so please cut me some slack if this update is all over the place. Some of you asked for an update, so here it is. Though honestly, not much has changed. Some days are better than others. First off, thanks to everyone who shared your own experiences as guardians or as kids who were raised by siblings. It helps to know I'm not alone in this struggle. For those asking how I'm doing personally, not great, but managing. I had another mini breakdown in my car during lunch break yesterday. Just sat there crying for like 10 minutes, then pulled myself together and finished my route. It's embarrassing to admit, but sometimes it all just gets to be too much. I think I need to find some kind of outlet or I'm going to burn out completely. Things were pretty quiet for a few days after our big argument. I actually went ahead and got her the flip phone like I said I would, a basic model that can call and text. At first, she completely refused to use it, just left it sitting on the kitchen counter where I put it. But eventually, she realized that it was her only means of contacting her friends, so she reluctantly took it. I caught her glaring at it like it had personally offended her, which I guess in her mind it had. The first few days were rough. She kept complaining that she couldn't do anything with this stupid brick, and how all her friends were going to think she was weird for having a flip phone. I tried explaining that lots of people are actually switching back to simpler phones these days to avoid social media addiction and constant notifications, but she just rolled her eyes at me. For about a week, she barely came out of her room when I was home. Our conversations were pretty much limited to, can we talk? Can I have my phone back? No, then no, rinse and repeat. She would leave her room to eat when I wasn't around, and go to school, but otherwise kept to herself. I was starting to worry that I'd damaged our relationship permanently. I tried to keep our normal routines going. I'd make breakfast, leave it on the counter for her with a note, usually just, have a good day or something simple. I'd try to be home for dinner when my schedule allowed it. One morning last week, I came downstairs to find a bowl and spoon in the sink that hadn't been there the night before. When I checked the fridge, I noticed she'd made herself a sandwich for lunch and left the ingredients out. Little things, but it felt like we were living in separate worlds. She's been hanging out at her friend Maddie's house more often, probably to get access to a real smartphone. Maddie's mom texted me to check if it was okay, and I said yes. I'm glad she has someone to talk to, even if it's not me right now. I did call Maddie's mom just to give her a heads up about the situation, so she'd understand why my sister suddenly had a flip phone and might be in a bad mood. She was really understanding and said she'd keep an eye on things without making it obvious she was checking up on my sister. She also invited us both over for dinner this weekend, which was nice of her. I said we'd try to make it if my schedule allowed. Work has been insane lately. They've got me covering extra routes because 2 carriers are out sick, so I'm doing 12-hour days minimum. My feet are killing me, and I've got a weird rash on my leg from walking so much. My supervisor keeps saying it'll get better next week, but that's what he said last week too. On Wednesday, I had an absolutely hellish day. Pouring rain the entire time, a dog chased me for half a block, and I got yelled at by some guy because his package was late, like that's somehow my personal fault. By the time I got home, I was soaking wet, exhausted, and in a terrible mood, but when I walked in, I smelled something cooking. My sister had actually made dinner. Just pasta with jar sauce, but still. She mumbled something about how she was hungry and figured I would be too. It wasn't exactly a peace offering, but it felt like a small step in the right direction. Tonight, I got done with work a bit earlier than usual, only a 10-hour day instead of 12 plus yay, and decided to try again. I stopped at the store on the way home and picked up ingredients for tacos, which used to be our Friday night tradition before all this happened. When I got home, she was in her room as usual. I knocked on her door and asked if we could talk. After a long pause, she finally said, okay, which felt like a small victory. We sat down in the living room and I started by discussing what she said at school and why it was so serious. We talked about the gravity of falsely labeling someone a pedophile, even as a joke, and I asked her why she thought that was something to joke about. She didn't say much at first, just kind of shrugged and mumbled, but I think she finally understands the severity and how foolish, horrible it was to do that. At least I hope she does. Eventually, she admitted that she just thought it would be funny, because her friends laugh at those videos and she didn't think about how it could affect me specifically. Then I told her the flip phone wouldn't be permanent. I just need to see some improvement in her behavior and attitude, and then we can talk about getting her smartphone back, though it will have parental controls on it. I also assured her that her phone was in a safe place. It's in my storage locker with a padlock, only I know the combination too, and promised I wouldn't go through it or invade her privacy. That seemed to ease her mind a bit. She asked how long she'd have to use the flip phone, and I said I didn't have a specific timeline in mind, but that we could revisit the issue in a month if things were going better. She didn't seem thrilled with that answer, but at least she didn't start yelling again. I told her I loved her and that she was my best friend, and that I'm lucky to have the privilege of being her brother. I asked if I could give her a hug. She said whatever, but let me hug her, which honestly made my day. She didn't really say much throughout our talk other than the occasional, okay, but she did come down for dinner afterward and didn't completely avoid me, so I'm taking that as progress. We actually made the tacos together, which was nice, almost like old times. She even told me about this science project she's working on at school, something about growing plants in different types of light. It's the most she's talked to me in days. During dinner, she mentioned that her friend's older brother is coming home from college next weekend and wanted to know if she could go to his welcome home party. I told her I'd need to know more details, who would be there, whether parents would be supervising, that kind of thing. She didn't get defensive like she usually does when I ask questions like that, just said she'd find out. Another small win. Money is still an issue though. Even with cutting back her phone plan, I'm barely making ends meet. My car needs new tires and the rent just went up $50 a month. I'm looking into some side gigs I can do on my days off, maybe food delivery or something. So that's where things stand now. No dramatic resolution, just slowly trying to rebuild some trust. Anyway, thanks for listening to me vent about all this. Being a guardian to a teenager when you're still trying to figure out your own life is hard as hell, especially when you never asked for or expected to be in this position. Some days, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm trying. Does anyone have any suggestions for how to move forward from here, or am I handling this all wrong? Also, I was thinking about the upcoming anniversary of our mom's death, which is next month. It's always a tough time for both of us. Last year, we just pretended it wasn't happening, and that was a disaster. Should I plan something specific this time, like visiting her grave or looking at photo albums together? Or would that just make things worse? My sister hasn't mentioned it yet, but I know she's thinking about it because she's been wearing our mom's earrings lately. One last thing. My sister's 14th birthday is coming up in a few months. I want to do something special to show her I'm not just the mean guardian who took her phone away. Any ideas that won't completely break the bank? I was thinking maybe concert tickets for her and a friend, but good seats are so expensive these days. Or maybe I could try to fix up her bedroom a bit. She's been wanting to repaint it forever. Sorry this got so long. Thanks again for all your support and advice. It really does help just knowing there are people out there who care. Edit. Oh, and I should probably explain something I didn't mention before. The reason she yelled "back off pedo" is apparently because there's this video going around of some kids running around a park yelling "get away pedo" at random strangers and filming them frantically running away. Just some stupid internet trend she was imitating. I don't know why she thought it would be funny to do that to me of all people. When I found this out, she finally told me. I was even more pissed. I mean, what kind of fucked up trend is that? Yelling serious accusations at innocent people for laughs and filming their reactions? What happened to the Tide Pod challenge or whatever? At least that only hurt the idiots doing it. OFC, not my sister doing it. I tried to explain to her why that's not just unfunny but actually dangerous. What if one of those strangers in the park had a heart condition and the shock of being publicly accused like that triggered something? What if one of them had a weapon and felt threatened? What if one of them was a registered sex offender who panicked at being recognized? There are so many ways that could go wrong. She just rolled her eyes at that part of the conversation. But whatever. I'm just glad she's talking to me again, even if it's not a perfect resolution.